Hello, I'm Josh Rubenstein. It is an honor to be your host for this 20th anniversary of 9/11, celebrating our heroes virtual event. I wish we could all be in person, but of course, we live in a world of masks and social distancing, so it's just not possible this year. 20 years ago, the world changed. 9/11, 2001. We'll never forget where we all were, what we were all doing. Certainly the men and women of Station 88 in the San Fernando Valley. They will remember that day forever because they were called into service. The men and women of Los Angeles Fire Department Station 88, their urban search and rescue team, the gold standard in firefighting. Wherever there's calamity in the world, they're called into service. And that morning, they were indeed called to service in New York City. Captain Dustin Clark among them. He'll never forget that harrowing day. Here's his story.
My name's Dustin Clark, 26-year veteran of the Los Angeles Fire Department. Looking back 20 years ago, I don't feel worthy standing here discussing this event with the public at large, since I was such a small microscopic dot in the overall operational situation that took place on that horrific day. If we're all to end up looking back, we can all end up pinpointing the place that we were at when we end up realizing this great nation of ours was under attack. I remember myself being somewhat of a normal day, getting ready to end up graduating from paramedic school at Paramedic Training Institute in Los Angeles County, and woke up to end up finding New York City in turmoil, Pentagon in turmoil, and the nation, a situation that nobody has ever ended up dealing with in our generation. We can end up remembering certain things that end up triggering certain things within all of us. A sense of pride in our nation, a sense of pride in ourselves, courage that we ended up striving to end up finding deep inside, a sense of community, a sense of togetherness, and a sense of everyone wanting to end up helping and lending a helping hand. There were several groups that responded from Los Angeles Fire Department, the largest being California Task Force 1. I found myself on a plane 2 days after the towers fell, with air traffic grounded to a halt. I can't explain how we were granted clearance to fly out of Van Nuys Airport to end up on a little puddle jumper donated by a clothing manufacturer in Calabasas named John Paul Richards. And 20 years ago, it seems like yesterday. Through a course of I don't know how many hurdles and challenges that we ended up enduring just in that 12 to 14-hour flight across the nation, I found myself that night standing arm in arm with 7 other brothers that I found myself with, staring at Ground Zero. I don't have the words. Sad, anger, sense of just hopelessness. Couldn't believe what was before my eyes. Surreal doesn't begin to end up defining what was going on in all of our minds at that point in time. If you can imagine 8 grown men standing together in cold silence, arm in arm, tears. We just ended up knowing we were at the right place. We knew that we ended up having a skill set that we would like to end up offering to the brothers and sisters of the FDNY. Working the day shift, we ended up with FDNY battalion chief that kind of took this volunteer group under his wing, and he ended up wanting us to work for him every day, and ended up finding ourselves in all sorts of nooks and crannies of that operational area. Placing yourself in harm's way. I rose my right hand at a young age in my life to end up defending life and property. I didn't realize that I was going to have the opportunity to end up working on an incident of this magnitude. 20 years, it's gone by quick, but let's just end up saying it was an honor and privilege to be able to end up going back there in that time of need. I feel privileged to end up being able to talk to you about it. Let's just say, again, I don't feel worthy to end up standing before you. It's definitely something that ended up changing our nation for forever. One thing that does end up sticking out in my mind is the fact that I've never felt so much togetherness, unity, the people of New York coming together, the sense of pride and the sense of community. It was heartwarming and heartbreaking in the same breath. I'd like to end up thinking or hoping that this tragic event left us better than we were before. The lessons learned, the growth of individuals and growth of the nation, all of this turmoil and sadness and grief, I'd like to end up saying we came out a little bit better in the end because of what I ended up witnessing from not only the fire service but from the nation at large. The best of what humanity is what I witnessed the days after. The nation coming together as one. There was no race, there was no gender, there was no dividing lines that we sometimes end up falling back on. There was just Americans. I think in my heart and my personal opinion, we're starting to get away from that, and I wish we could end up as a whole end up remembering where we all were during those horrific days, hours, weeks, months, and years after, to end up coming together as one for the betterment of all and try to be the best humans as possible. I'd also like to remind everybody that not only the close to 3,000 people that lost their lives on that day, remembering them, but the ripple effect of the sons, the daughters, mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, to the survivors, the men and women that ended up having to breathe the toxic gases, hazardous materials, everything with the response, and not only the first responders. Everyone inside that infrastructure was exposed to these elements, and many have succumbed to what they were exposed to. The Victims' Compensation Fund needs to end up being continually supported. There's still people that are suffering. I think we need to keep them in our hearts and the support through our government to end up making sure that that fund does not end up running dry. A lot of people are out there in need of medical and mental attention because not all scars are visible. I would also like to end up take this opportunity to end up thanking the individuals that ended up providing a place outside of my fire station that I'm assigned to in Sherman Oaks, Fire Station 88. A memorial, steel, a beautiful fountain, basically ended up making a focal point for the community. Place for every 9/11 that I've been assigned there is a meeting place for the community to come and reflect and mourn, cry, and have a sense of togetherness. From the bottom of my heart, I'd like to end up thanking the individuals that brought that forward and made it possible. We as an organization and as a fire station want to extend our gratitude and say thank you for creating this and supporting us day in and day out, week in and week out. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Captain Clark, for that emotional story. Shortly after 9/11, a group of people had an idea, a great idea. Build a memorial in front of Station 88. This was a place where people could honor the fallen and pay their respects right here in Los Angeles. This was no easy task. In fact, it was a Herculean task. Joe and Debbie Lanza can tell us how they made it happen.
It all began many, many years ago, a couple of years after the collapse of the World Trade Center and the destruction of many, many, many tens of thousands of lives. And I was at home with Debbie, and Carrie Conjoyan came to visit. She's an old family friend. Went to school with my wife, and we've known her for many, many, many years. And I was talking on the phone to my brother, and when I got off, I related the conversation to Carrie and Debbie. My brother was put in charge of the steel. He worked for Mayor Giuliani in New York, and he was to take requests for steel for people all over the world, different governments, different fire departments, police stations, state departments. And Carrie had this brilliant idea to try and get a piece of steel for the 88 fire department, and that was the beginning. So we got the steel sent up to us. It took a few months, but eventually we got it. FedEx delivered it without any compensation, which was extremely nice of them. We decided, let's build a fountain and put the steel on display. Then we had another friend, both of ours, a friend of all of ours, and he had a contact to get a piece of the Pentagon, and he came through with that. So we built this fountain. And we put a lot of time and money and effort into it, and it took a while to build. When it was completed, we had a dedication. Many people came from the community. It was very personal for me because we lost so many firemen in New York City, not to mention all the innocent people. And my dad was the oldest living volunteer fireman in the city of New York at the time, so it had a personal meaning to me, and I had to do something to honor the city, the civilians, the fire department, the policemen that were lost, and this was it. And I thank Carrie for coming up with the idea because it hit all of our hearts very strongly. And seeing this to fruition was something I'll never forget. I was very happy to be a part of it, and hopefully it'll last forever, and people will never forget. This hopefully will help.
Thank you, Joe and Debbie, for the successful undertaking. You're right. This fountain helps us to never forget that fateful day 20 years ago. It's an introspective place of healing where we can remember our fallen firefighters, first responders, and citizens. At this time, I'd like you to join me in a moment of silence to honor our fallen heroes. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Assistant Fire Chief Wade White. He too was called into service on that fateful day and went to New York right after 9/11.
I was a captain, just newly promoted at Fire Station 66. Got up in the morning, went into the kitchen, and the TV was on, and we saw that something bad was happening over in New York. A plane had crashed into one of the buildings, and we were watching the coverage on TV, and I knew that California Task Force 1 was up for that month, so we started communicating out with the folks at Fire Station 88 at our disaster response section, and discussed what the potential plan would be for deploying. Knowing what it is that we do, firefighters go into harm's way, and we knew that the firefighters in New York were heading up the stairwells in those buildings. And as we saw that first building fall, we knew that a lot of firefighters and civilians had just died in that building. And emotionally, it kind of rips your heart out. And we knew that we had to get over there and help, knowing that our team was up. And we did everything we could to get out the door as quick as we could and on those aircraft and head over to the World Trade Center to help out. We got there September 12th, the next day at flew across the U.S., only airplane in U.S. airspace, and we started deploying our equipment, and the magnitude of what we saw out there at the site was it was overwhelming. You could just imagine 2 high-rises along with several buildings that were around those high-rises had fallen into this massive pile. There was no color to anything. Everything was gray, dust everywhere, just chaos, utter chaos, overwhelming. You know, you're wondering where do you start. So we ended up going to work that day and did what we could and proceeded for the next roughly 2 weeks doing what we could on that pile to find anybody surviving. We utilized dogs. We utilized our trained search technicians. We moved a lot of debris. We worked a lot with other task forces who were in the area, who had been deployed, steel workers, convergent volunteers, and there was quite a bond that was built over those 2 weeks. And it was good, you know. We for what was going on there in that area, you know, all the sadness and the destruction and the loss. We knew that just having those folks with us and the bond that we built was going to get us through. Yeah. Behavioral health, or the mental health aspect of what all of us went through 20 years ago, and it obviously still impacts me, and I'm sure that's the case for a lot of folks. I think our organization did a great job in identifying that, even back 20 years ago, that post-traumatic stress was going to be an issue. Like I said, 20 years to the day, we're still, we're still dealing with it, and I'm pretty sure it's going to go on forever. So I think what's an important takeaway here is that younger members in organizations that become firefighters, they don't know what they're going to see. When I joined the fire department, I had no idea what I'd be facing over my career. I'd be going to World Trade Center and have a couple of buildings that collapsed. So I think it's important to really take a look at what you have available to you from a mental health or a behavioral health standpoint, and use those tools and talk to people, and just make sure you're taking care of yourself, and you're taking care of the person next to you. You're taking care of your family members, because it can be bad. I think what the country should remember about what happened on September 11th, 2001 is that we all went to work that day thinking that everything was good, just like any other day, and you just don't know what's going to happen. It's been really nice to have people like Carrie, who's put together a memorial for us, and with her group, and that it's good to have that remembrance, and that I guess the camaraderie, the partnership with the community that that we know that we're supported. So I thank Sherman Oaks for what they've done. I thank the city of Los Angeles, the citizens of LA for what they've done for us, because it really is a big deal. And I guess don't ever stop that. I'll always remember.
Thank you so much, Chief White, for those emotional and vital remarks. Now, let's go back to our memorial in 2016 to listen to the sweet sounds of the River Oaks Chorus.
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. When will my fathers die? Land of the Pilgrim's Pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring, let freedom ring. Let its music resound throughout the nation, and let it celebrate sweet liberty that is keeping us free and strong. Oh, let freedom ring, freedom, and let everyone share its inspiration. And let the promise not be satisfied until no one's denied its song. It's a dream to build a one. Dream. And let freedom sing. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. For the children of every generation. May the love of freedom always ring. It has brought us this far. It proclaims who we are, and together we sing. Let freedom people everywhere. Let freedom ring. People everywhere. Let freedom ring. People all over the world. Let freedom ring. We say people everywhere. Let freedom ring. People everywhere. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. Freedom ring. Sing freedom.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Hopefully, we can all be together next year and we can do it without these. For now, God bless our firefighters and first responders who are always on the front lines of peril. Good night.